Okay, so right now we're gonna go over the brain and the cranial nerves. And your brain is protected by cranial bones on the outside. They have meninges. Meninges are continuous with the spinal meninges and they have the same name. We have the dura mater, which is the most superficial of the meninges. It's made of the spinal, it's different than spinal meninges because the dura mater is thicker and made out of two layers, while the arachnoid matter is similar to the spinal meninges, has like the web-like projections like the spinal cord. The pia mater is the deepest of the three layers. It falls on the dips, the fissures. But in contrast, the spinal cord has epidural space, while there's no epidural space around the brain. So we have the blood-brain barrier, which regulates the passage of substances between the blood and the CSF. So it's all the capillaries in your blood already are leaky. There's a lot of splits and spaces between those epithelial cells where all the blood plasma can leak out and become interstitial fluid. We don't want this to happen because if you have a bacteria infection in your brain, you don't want that to enter your brain and cause massive brain damage. The capillaries in the central nervous system are completely sealed shut. There's many tight junctions between the epithelial cells so the fluid can't leak out. Astrocytes secrete additional chemicals that help seal all those epithelial cells together. So the cerebrospinal fluid is very important. It has water, glucose, oxygen, waste, and ions. They help with three things. They help with shock absorption, so it prevents your brain from coming in and contract with a cranial cavity and damaging itself. It also supports and suspends your brain, prevents your brain from collapsing from its own weight, and it helps circulate nutrients and waste to your brain. So if you don't circulate, you're gonna run out of oxygen, you're gonna run out of glucose, and there's gonna have a buildup of waste and other terrible byproducts. So we have ventricles. Four ventricles. Two lateral ventricles are connected by the interventricular foramen, which connects the third ventricle in the middle, which then passes on the cerebral adduct. We also have choroid plexes. These are specialized epithelial cells, and they are inside the lateral ventricles and third ventricles, and they help produce the cerebral spinal fluid. So if you have nutrients and oxygens in your blood plasma, you want to get out into your cerebrospinal fluid. In order for those nutrients become cerebrospinal fluid, it has to be absorbed by the endothelial cell, the capillary, and then pass into the cells of the epidermal cells. They will use exocytosis to spit it out into the brain and create cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, so let me get the steps for you guys for all of this because it's like kind of like a lengthy step on how um cerebrospinal fluid is also, so let me get out for you guys. Okay, so it starts in the ventricles of the brain. Lateral ventricles produce cerebrospinal fluid from the choroid plexus, and it flows to the lateral ventricles, the interventricular foramen, third ventricle, and the third ventricle has choroid plexus that add more cerebral spinal fluid. The third ventricle, the CSF, travels through a cerebral aqueduct into the fourth ventricle, and then from the fourth ventricle, the pathway splits. Some goes to the spinal canal, some goes to the spinal cord. The rest exits in the subarachnoid space around the brain and spinal cord. And it circulates around the spinal cord and then outside the brain, and then reaches the superior part of the brain and gets absorbed by into the bloodstream by arcuate villi, which drains into the venous circulation. Okay, and so there's okay, so the problem is there's hypocephalus. So it's swelling of the brain. So a blockage of the circulation of the CSF will cause the brain, so the brain will be pushed against the cranial cavities, which can cause brain damage. And in children you can actually kind of see the swelling, while in adults their cranial bones are kind of fused, so you can't really see as much. Okay, so neural mapping uses MRI. It checks the blood flow of the brain to make sure assumptions where the brain is being active. So if you see blood flow in a certain portion, that means you're currently using that portion of the brain. Neural mapping is it pinpoints the precise location of each neuron. They focus on myelinated axons and it uses to map connections between neurons. We have the major regions of the brain. So we have the brainstem that's split into the medulla oblongata, pons, and midbrain. Medulla oblongata is the inferior part of the brain brainstem. It relays information between the spinal cord and the brain and is in charge of sending information between two of these, and it has visceral automatic functions. They help control the visceral organs so you don't have to think about. So they have a cardiac center, which is a specific area in the medulla oblongata, and vasomotor centers, which control the contraction, respiratory center that work together to like kind of have a rhythm for your respiration. It also works with the pons, and they are responsible for coughing, sneezing, vomiting, swallowing. And they have nuclei, and they're responsible for processing things like your cochlear senses and your vestibular balances. Well, the pons are like kind of like the bridge, right? The little bulge shape. It has longitudinal nerve fibers that connect the medulla oblongata up to the cerebellum. The transverse nerve fibers that run horizontally are connecting the cerebrum to the cerebellum. It's used to send things around your brain, it relays things, and it controls the breathing rhythm. We have the midbrain. These are mostly tracts, so myelinated axons. And there's different types of tracts. Some of them connect the lower brain stem to the cerebrum, while others connect to other directions of the body. They have tiny little colliculi, and they are for visual and auditory reflex, your startle reflex, like your response to loud sounds or fast movement reflex. You have the cerebellum. And basically, these are nerve tracts that connect to the brainstem, and they kind of figure out your body's position in space. So if your arm's up, you can kind of feel it in the air. Helps you fix things. You have cortex in the middle, in the outside of the organ, while the medulla is the white matter. And the arbor vitae is a tree of life, and it coordinates muscle movement. So people who get hit in the head, they kind of like have a hard time processing language, emotional processing, and they have weird jerky moments. Okay, so we're gonna have the dicephalon, which are split into thalamus, which is the relay station. It's the gray matter in the base of wait, let me find it. Yeah. It's a gray matter in the base of the cerebrum. It makes up the wall of the third ventricle, a relay station for almost all the sensory input in the body. Takes in sensory impulses. So if you had stabbed your toe, right? It hits up into your thalamus and you kind of have a sense of where the pain is, but not where it is in your body yet. So it doesn't receive information from the olfactory, but it sends information to the proper region of the cerebrum. So you kind of have a general awareness. It keeps you conscious, keeps you awake. And yeah, the hypothalamus, it's homeostasis, right? So it makes up the floor of the third ventricle and maintains the homeostasis using your automatic nervous system. It maintains your heart, your blood pressure, your body temperature, water, electrolyte, and circadian rhythms. They have little mammillary bodies that are for emotional behavior. And mammillary bodies are actually um part of your olfactory nerve, so that's why people link like why smell is processed with memories. And the infundibulum, right, is shaped like a cone and it attaches to its hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and secretes like hormones like the oxytocin and then antidiuretic hormones too. We have the epithalamus next. Okay, so epithalamus secretes melatonin. Um, it's tightly connected to pineal gland, and yeah, and it helps with circadian rhythms. Okay, so we have the cerebrum, which is the primary function of your higher mental function. It's for reasoning, it's for intelligence, and it's divided into different hemispheres. It interprets sensory and initiates voluntary muscle movement and stores memories, provides reasoning, intelligence, personality, all the things that make you you. Okay, so we have the corpus callosum is the center in the middle. It connects the two hemispheres with the gyrus, which are the elevations, the sulcus, the grooves, the fissures that separate regions. We have the longitudinal fissure, separates right and left hemispheres, and the transverse fissure that separates cerebellum from cerebellum. Okay, so next we have superficial landmarks. Okay, so they say that the reason why I have gyri and sulci is because it has more surface area, which means they're gonna have more processing power. So it's gonna, and then that means you have more information. We have our cerebrum, and there's a circular sulcus that inside. So, okay, let's go. So the insula is inside the lateral cerebral sulcus. And cerebral cortex is tends to have a lot of gray matter, has a lot of neuron cell bodies, and it holds 75% of the cell bodies in the entire nervous system. They have tracks that are white matter myelinated axons. And then let's go to the functional. Okay. So sensory areas receive and interpret sensory impulses, motor areas. There are also motor areas that send impulses out to your muscles, and association areas control your memory, reasoning, verbalization. And each lobe has these things. Okay, so it determines this job is to receive and interpret sensory nerve impulses. Okay, so the primary somatosensory area, it receives your cuteness or your skin sensation, temperature, pain, pressure, vibration. The proprioception is your body position. And they're dedicated to your fingers because you have a lot of sensation in your fingers, so it needs to be sensitive. There's a lot of nerve endings in your eyes, your nose, and stuff like that. We have the cerebrum, which is the motor area. It sends impulses out to your muscles or your glands of your body, and this is what is used to determine your responses. You have your Broca area that is responsible for controlling your mouth movement, which helps you speak, and it moves your tongue, your lips. So we have the primary motor area. And the motor homunculus doesn't have genitalia on it. It's mostly located along the precentral gyrus in both hemispheres and controls all voluntary muscle movements on the body. And we have association areas which integrate all your information like memory, reasoning, verbalization. Okay. And then it has different parts like the hemispheric dominance where one hemisphere is more dominant than the other side. And you also have the general interpretive area where your occipital, parietal, and temporal integrate all together. So if you're driving, you kind of use all those senses. And you have, let's go to the nerves. And you have 12 pairs of nerves. Okay, let's go through each one. Olfactory nerves, it's your sense of smell. Optic nerves, this is your sense of sight. Trigeminal nerves are split into three things, the ophthalic, maxillary, and mandibular. Vestibular nerve, it's a cochlear branch and a vestibular branch. Vagus nerve, the wandering nerve, it's a lot of different parts. It has a larynx, heart, stomach, intestine, heart, so lungs. And let's see. Yeah. And this is how you kind of remember all the different, like how to remember all the nerves. That'll be all.